Hey guys, Ryan, I'm Chasing Happiness podcast. I hope you guys are having a great day. Today on the podcast, we have George Hutton. George is an author of over 100 books, entrepreneur, business owner, hypnotist, personal coach, influence and persuasion expert, sales consultant, and master of human nature. So we've got some rabbit holes to go down there. George, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ryan. Great to be here.
You're more than welcome. So before we get into exactly what you're doing, a little bit about yourself and your background, and then we'll get down some rabbit holes.
Sure. Well, when I was a kid, I was massively interested in science, and I had all these science experimental kits I got from Radio Shack as a kid, and I would run all the equipment in my bedroom through this and almost lit the house on fire a couple of times. When I was in junior high school, I read all kinds of books on science that had the math taken out of them, so it was easy to understand for a kid, like things like quantum mechanics and relativity. And when I went to go to college, I naturally chose physics as my major. It was like almost a no-brainer. So I got a degree in physics and I worked at a biomedical company for 10 years. I ran the research and development laboratory. But then I took a few years off when the company moved from California to Minnesota. And I decided to go into teaching English in Asia. I kind of wandered around, did some traveling for about 4 years. And then I went to Asia, Korea, Taiwan, Japan for about 15 years. And while I was teaching English, I got massively interested in the structure of language. And that led me down into NLP and conversational hypnosis. And I went to a bunch of seminars. And I still looked at everything through the lens of science and engineering, human nature through engineering, science, or the structure of language and the structure of thought through science. And I just started getting really into the idea of how to persuade people, understanding the structure of human nature and understanding the structure of language. And I did a copywriting for a while. I hired myself out as a copywriter. So I had to learn as much as I could about what makes people do things. And so I read all kinds of books on persuasion, and I've been doing that ever since. I started a blog, and my blog posts turned into ebooks, ebooks turned into products, and I've just been writing books and making products ever since. You mentioned that I have over 100 books written. I would say that maybe 80 of them are nonfiction. They're in the space of self-help and persuasion and belief change. And the others are fiction. I went through a couple of years where I did write a lot of fiction. I wrote a novel every couple of weeks and just kept pumping them out on Amazon. I just can't stop writing. Even today, when I'm not writing a book, I write at least 2,000 words a day.
Well, wait. You were pumping out books every 2 weeks?
I had a fantastic schedule, a rhythm going. It was still while I was teaching English in Japan, and I would write 4 chapters every day. And then when I got done writing the 4 chapters, I would game out the next 4 chapters. And then when the book was finished, I had a kind of a template based on the Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey. And it was a template where you had about 45, 50 chapters. And so I would write a book every couple of weeks and then I would send it off to my editor. And while she was going through the book, I would kind of game out the next book. And so I just did that every 2, 3 weeks. And it was kind of a very, very interesting process. I kind of invented my own form of self hypnosis. This is going to sound very strange. When I would sit down in the morning, I would start writing at maybe 3 o'clock in the morning because I had to finish before I went to work at 7. And instead of sitting there writing and trying to think what would happen next, I kind of hypnotized myself. So I imagined that I was actually watching something on Netflix while I was writing. And it took me about the first half of a chapter to get into that. But once I got into it, I just kind of blurred my mind. I was just kind of watching, oh wow, what's gonna happen next? And it was really kind of a weird process. And it I just kept that up for about a year and a half. And about every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, I would upload a new book onto Amazon Kindle.
Wow, that's going to have some rabbit holes we're going to go down. So let's let's back up from the beginning. What really drew you into NLP? And for the listeners that don't know what that is, could you explain a little bit about it and how it works within our lives and how we interact?
NLP was discovered accidentally by a couple of guys at the University of Santa Cruz back in the 60s. And it was two guys. One guy was a linguist, the other guy was a computer programmer. And the computer programmer was, as his side job, was taking these transcripts from therapy sessions by, I think, was Fritz Perls. And as he was just listening to the recordings and typing them out, he noticed that this guy, Fritz Perls, was using the same basic language pattern structures over and over again during the sessions. And so he took this to his linguistics professor, and he looked at it and said, yeah, these are the same patterns. And so these two guys started to study all the kind of world-class therapists at the time. And one of the guys they studied was a guy named Milton Erickson. And he essentially invented conversational hypnosis. People would come see him with their problems. They would tell him their problems. Milton would say, that reminds me of a story. And he would tell these very convoluted, very confusing stories. The patient would leave an hour later, not have any idea what just happened. But then a couple of weeks later, they would realize their problems had been solved. And so a lot of NLP came from reverse engineering the linguistic structure that Milton Erickson used to tell these stories to his patients. And the basic idea of NLP, which is neuro-linguistic programming, which from the legends is a name that Richard Bandler made up kind of on the spur of a moment. It's basically how you can change people's thinking by using the words and understanding the words that we use to talk to ourselves to describe how we think about ourselves. And if you can change the language we use to other people, if you can change the language you use with ourselves, you can have a lot of effect on opening up the potential, so to speak. And I'm not going to lie, the reason I got into NLP was because when I was living in Japan, I met this guy, and this guy was just an absolute natural with the ladies. He was this tall, skinny guy. He wasn't really that attractive, but he could just walk up to girls and just make them just swoon all over him. And one day he told me, George, you need to study NLP. And I thought, NL what? If it's going to make me do that, I'm all over it. And that kind of led me down the NLP rabbit hole. And I've been studying and practicing all these techniques from NLP ever since, mostly the language patterns. There's basically three different types of kind of spheres within NLP. There's the language patterns where you learn how to speak persuasively to people. There's the self-development part where there's all these kind of processes, each imaginary process or imagination-based processes that you go through to remove your limitations. Then there's kind of a modeling process where you can copy behavior from other people. And so there are three basic areas of NLP.
Within those three areas of NLP, which area do we typically use the most in our lives? And I'm going down a rabbit hole, and I'll preface this and come back to it, is when we are introduced, like this guy you're telling me about that could walk up to any woman and they would melt and go crazy. That's really like a cold call in sales. I'm guessing, right. And I know a little bit about NLP. I'm a novice. I'm just going to play it and shoot from the hip. Is when we have that interaction, I'm sure there's things within NLP that will drive us to pull things out of people. How does that play when it comes into those connections? How does it kind of work?
There's two basic areas if you wanted to be able to do that, if you wanted to start from scratch. One is you have to have a kind of a belief system that says that's okay, that it's fun to do that it's enjoyable to do that. It's hard to do that if you have any amount of social anxiety. Once you have the inner game, so to speak, then it's a matter of learning the outer game, which is how you talk to people, the kind of questions you ask, the kinds of what they call linguistic presuppositions you use during the conversation.
Wow, this takes me to this is going to go a couple places. I like this. This is interesting because I've never had anybody come on the show that is we've really gotten into this at all and pulling back the layer of the onions. Sorry. So when we are interacting with one another, we tend to, like you say, we have social anxiety or we have our walls up or whatever that case is. Can you give some examples how NLP would bring those walls down to where you can, I say, communicate with somebody and actually have them listen to what you're saying and not hear what you're saying?
Right. To get rid of your inner issues or to improve your inner game, so to speak, there's a lot of NLP procedures. For example, a lot of our social anxiety comes from childhood. Okay. When we're little kids, our brains are programmed to soak up as much data from the world as we can. So we run out into the world hoping to get something cool, and we're told, no, stop doing that from the adults in our life. And that kind of programs us to be afraid of expressing our desire as adults. And so technique to do that is to go back and kind of dig up as many childhood memories as you can, and then go re-experience them and reframe how you reference those memories. Because when we're kids, when we're 5 years old, we don't know anything. And so we're trying to get something cool, and we get yelled at by the adults that say, stop doing that. We make the assumption that something's wrong with us. And that's what causes social anxiety. I'm going to go over there, I'm going to talk to the girl, and she's going to reject me because she's going to see something lacking in me. This same kind of idea even shows up in a lot of kind of romantic movies. You'll have two characters getting closer and closer together, and one character has this deep fear that if she finds out who I really am, she'll run away from me. And so the trick is to go back and find each memory and go relive that memory. And instead of making the assumption that the adult is yelling at you because there's something wrong with you, the adult is yelling at you because there's something going on with them. And it's about them, not about you. And that's kind of one structural idea that you could do with NLP to slowly eradicate all those events that caused an adult to have social anxiety.
That is really cool, but this is just me saying it out loud. That's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
So
that's one of my basic ideas about NLP. NLP is unfortunately taught as a kind of a once and done trick. But my firm belief is that if you want to create and maintain a healthy set of beliefs, you need to put in just as much work and persistence as if you wanted to maintain a healthy body. And people that exercise don't exercise once or twice and say that it's done. They exercise every single day. And I firmly believe that if you want to maintain a healthy set of beliefs, you need to do these exercises maybe 10, 20 minutes every single day. And it is a lot of work, which is why not a lot of people can do it.
It's kind of like that morning routine that people don't want to do, to where you have, right, like you say, you were getting up at 3:00 in the morning and writing, for that time. That to me is called stacking or winning. It's building that repetition up. And that's what I do. I get up in the morning, I journal, I write down the goals that I want to accomplish for the day. It's my quiet time. I read Bible verses. I read inspirational things to start my day out right. I'm guessing NLP is the same way in stacking that. And for me personally, I'd like to learn more about it. So I'm going to pick your brain even more, because we all have something inside of us or something that's happened in our past that holds us back. For me, and this is just personal relatable, is from sales and marketing. I never thought I could actually be any good at it, because I never was the best speaker. And until I was in corporate America and had to be forced on stage to learn how to speak and present, is when I felt more comfortable. And I'm sure there's plenty more I can learn, and there's a lot more that I can improve, especially with NLP.
Yeah.
Could you provide maybe one or two examples of where someone can go about this and start this process if they're really wanting to change their beliefs and become a better communicator, but also be able to connect with people better?
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the things I talk about in nearly all of my books. Is you have basically inner game, which is all the junk from your childhood, whether it's a good inner game or bad inner game. Then you have your outer game, which is the basic strategies. And the key is to just practice both very, very slowly and build a daily habit of working on inner game issues and practicing outer game behaviors. For example, if you wanted to become a fantastic public speaker, you need to practice public speaking, but you also need to practice the beliefs that support a fantastic public speaker. And that just requires, for example, going back into your past, finding all the memories where you actually were speaking in public, and purposely choose to reference those. And that will take a lot of work. But anything can be improved with the right kind of practice.
How do you go back into those memories? I mean, because I'm just relating to what you said about public speaking. I would probably say I've had 100, 150 where I was on stage, and I would probably say a majority of those tanked until the end. And I was actually had a great boss that actually put me through some public speaking courses, but then also helped me because he had the same issues. I don't know if I can remember all those.
Well, that's the thing about. Yeah.
I just know I tanked. I mean, it just was horrible. I stuttered and I was nervous, and I mean, there was all types of stuff.
Well, that's the problem with practicing the outer game stuff without really addressing the inner game stuff. You're never completely congruent when you practice the outer game stuff. So you really have not very much awareness. And so when you do tank, you can't really learn from why you tanked and do better next time. But everything that you practice is essentially a continuous stream of trial and error. And so if you start looking for memories, it's going to be hard at first. Most people have no idea how many memories they had from being childhood. But once you start kind of writing out one memory per day, you'll start to find a lot more memories. Then it becomes a very consistent process of reframing one memory from childhood per day and doing one kind of practice per day to become a better public speaker. And once you start getting rid of those negative childhood memories, you'll be much more aware of why you tanked, and you'll be able to think about it after the fact. And then next time you'll just learn from that mistake.
I'm guessing you have a book on all this.
Yeah, I've got a few books off the top of my head. There's a book called Public Speaking Confidence. I've written a couple of books on public speaking hypnosis, how to hypnotize people from the stage.
That's cool. I was just thinking about NLP initially because for me, public speaking today, I know I can get better, but I don't have that fright anymore. I mean, I'm on a podcast all the time. I go on other people's podcasts. I'm in front of cameras for the real estate stuff we do on a weekly basis. So, I mean, for me, it's become second nature. I think the next piece that I'm working on is in the real estate space. We're challenged right now because we have a serious headwind with interest rates. We sell affordable homes. So unfortunately, our clients or our potential buyers are being impacted the most through interest rates. And being able to connect with those individuals and also connect with realtors that are, I call cold outreaches, are probably the next hurdle that I'm working on, because I feel like there needs to be a better human contact than just having that conversation of, hey, let's do business together. It needs to be more about, let's peel back the layer of the onion and let's figure out how we can help one another.
Right. A great way to do that is to try to find out what their core, whoever they are, their core desires are, their core intentions are. Why are they in the real estate business? If they had the best real estate day or sale, what would that look like? And try to find out what's important to them and put things in terms of what's important to them. And also from an inner game standpoint, it would be hard to sell something if you have a belief that it's hard to sell that thing. Like if you have this belief that it's hard to sell real estate when interest rates are too high, that's just going to make you trip over your own feet. But if you have this honest belief that you can find people that will buy real estate even though interests are high, and that's not really an issue, then you'll behave that way and people will believe it. That's the thing about interacting with other people. Whatever we believe about ourselves, they will just take that for granted. And if you believe that selling in real estate in a high interest rate market is easy, the buyers will believe it's easy too, or the people you're reaching out will believe it too. And so I would say there's kind of a three core components to that. As one is, or not really three, maybe two, both the inner game and the outer game. And the inner game is just believe in what you're selling and realize that obstacles are always around. And one of my favorite quotes is from Marcus Aurelius, the emperor of Rome, the Stoic philosopher, who said the obstacle is the way.
Yeah, that's true.
The obstacles will teach you everything you need to know.
I totally agree with that.
And every time you go through an obstacle, you learn more, which will make it easier to go after what you're going after. And as far as reaching out, and making a connection, just kind of dial back what you want them to do and just turn off your own ego, turn off your own interests, and just find out what they're all about. Find out what they want. Find out why they're in the real estate market. Find out what they're hoping to achieve, and just get them to talk about themselves and what they want. And the more you build that up within them, the easier it will be to make those connections.
I love it. And I'll tell you about some of the scramble and I call it the scramble because that's what it is. In my prior life in corporate America, I ran call centers, collection agencies, all those things. I started in door-to-door collection. So I get that aspect. Oh yeah. Payday loan collections, guns, dogs, bats, crowbars, everything been pulled on me. So I get all that. The thing that really I don't understand, and I'm starting to get some headwind here, is realtors don't pick up their phone. You call them, they don't pick up. But you'd be amazed as soon as I text them and say, "Hey, Johnny, Ryan from TrueVest, I just gave you a call. Let's connect. Love to talk to you," type of a thing. I mean, they're instantaneously responding, saying, "Sure, that's great." But when someone calls, they don't pick up. And this is an industry to where you need to be picking up your phone if you want to do business.
Right.
And when I ask them that question, you know what they tell me? They tell me that they don't know what they don't know the telephone number, so they don't pick it up. And I said, "What about if I was a client, a potential client?" "Oh, you'll leave a message."
Huh.
How does NLP play into that? And I know part of it is the market, because I mean, we're both old enough. We've lived through some pretty bad markets. I lived in Vegas in 2007, 2008 and went through that market. And that's how I got into real estate. And realtors back then were so defeated, and I'm starting to see that same pattern come out.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, and I'm not trying to self-solve here, but I love picking your brain because you've got some great information. Is that how can I personally connect with them, help them, but also realize that I need to lower their walls down a little bit to make that human connection? Because I am not going to ask them for business right out of the chute or tell them, "Hey, this is what we're doing." I'm just trying to figure out, for me, I call it you said the same thing, their why. But to me, it's like, if you're not picking up the phone, what's your why to do business? Are you looking to go back to a 9-to-5 job, bussing tables, working for somebody else? Or do you want to stay in the business? That's a question I ask. And most of them don't have an answer.
Yeah, I would recommend right off the bat that that's kind of too abrupt of a question.
Okay.
One of my things that I've learned over the years is most customers, from a sales standpoint, they don't really have a specific idea of what they want. They generally have a vague idea of what they want. So if you start asking them specific questions, they're going to have to kind of guess to come up with answers. And I would recommend, when you make a connection with someone, just ask them what the biggest problems they're facing. And forget about trying to put them on the spot and make them tell you what they want to do. Just what problems would be easier for you to overcome. If your biggest obstacle to making money was gone, what would that look like? How does the market today look compared to when you started selling real estate? And just find out what they're thinking about and figure out how to communicate that through your texts and your emails.
And that's what I've started. So about 6 weeks ago, I started sending out a weekly text message to realtors that I've connected with. And it's just a basic text message talking about something that's going on in the industry that's, I don't know what happened here. Sorry. There we go. And realizing that we all have common threads as human beings. And then I attach a video in the actual text message to where they see me talking about the topic. So like last week was talking about human connection, just like we're talking about. And I explained to them, here's my struggle. I'm reaching out to realtors or home buyers, and people are really not picking up the phone. And my question to them is, are we in a business that we're customer centric and human connected? Or are we just going to live through our phones? And that's something we have to decide as business owners. Otherwise, it'll set us back in what we're trying to do. I send that out to about 500 realtors. And last week, I got a click-through rate of almost 32%. So it was a messaging that was softened because if you can't tell, I'm direct. And I know I need to do better with being direct instead of just doing that. But I got a lot of good feedback. So this week we're going to talk about a topic of understanding the market and where it's somewhat going, but how it impacts what you're trying to do, and lay that out. And the video is about 2 to 3 minutes. And when I follow up with people on a weekly basis from these individuals that click on the videos and watch it, they tell me there's no one else that's actually sharing this information and getting personal with me.
Good.
Which is good feedback. It's good. I just think for me mentally, and this is where I'm sorry, long-winded, to your question. Why do we tend to put our heads in the sand? Why do we want to just kind of keep on kicking that can down the road when we know we've got to do something?
Well, I think that stems from a combination of anxiety about the future and what they call normalcy bias.
Okay.
They're kind of afraid that they're in the wrong profession. They don't want to even question that idea that if they're in the wrong profession, they have to choose another profession, which means it's going to be maybe a period without any money. And it's also kind of ignoring this growing problem, like the frog in a pot of water that's slowly heating up. They kind of pretend that everything's normal, and so that would kind of make them kind of withdraw a little bit and not really be active. That's right now that's just popping into my head as a similar sounding idea structurally as to why Western societies have falling populations.
Mm,
And that is
yes.
because couples get married, and if they feel happy in their marriage, if they feel like the economy is booming, if they feel like they have a bright future, they'll have a lot of kids. But if they're questioning about the economy, if they're not sure they're going to have a bright future, they don't have kids. And so it's this kind of environment that doesn't seem quite right that makes people not want to do what people normally do. And so I would just imagine the real estate agents are in this environment where it's harder to sell houses and it's harder to get out there and meet people. And when the phone rings, their excuse is, I don't know the phone number. Is that what you said?
Yes. That's what they
That's
tell me.
real. That's really just an excuse. Because there's probably a little bit of anxiety that the phone might force them out of their kind of head in the hole sand or their head in the sand and be aware of what's going on. And they don't want to deal with that. That's like the outside world reminding them, knock, knock, knock. We're struggling out here. You need to come out and do something. And that's just kind of it's kind of like the same idea, I guess, when people go to the ATM and they're afraid to see their balance. And so they put the ATM, they draw the money out, but they cover the screen so they don't tell how much balance they have left over. It's kind of a reminder that forces them to acknowledge what the real state of the environment is, the real estate environment is. But as an aside, I would say that the videos you shoot that you send to people,
Mhm.
those videos are a perfect opportunity to put in a lot of NLP language patterns that would really, really want them or make them want to connect with you. And
I guess. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I would recommend you steer away from focusing on the problem, which is nobody's picking up their phones, and
Mhm.
come up with some kind of a solution. Look, we're in this market. It's harder than it ever was, but I think if we work together, we can still make a lot of money selling houses to people.
Yeah.
Something like that. Something like that.
I'll give you an example. So yesterday's Wednesday. I do follow-ups with realtors on a weekly basis that
Mm.
I've connected with. We have some personal conversations. We've talked about business, so forth. Yesterday, I followed up with a realtor, and she's telling me, "Hey, in a matter of a week from the last time we spoke," she said the market is basically, I mean, all our buyers are stopping because they were so worried about the Fed yesterday and so forth.
Right.
And I
Right.
said, "How are your listings going?" Because she has several listings that have been on the market for longer than 60 days. And she
Mhm.
says they're not selling. And I said, have you actually started talking to the sellers about buy downs? And she goes,
Mhm.
yes. And I've presented it to them. And she says it takes 3 or 4 times or 3 or 4 passes. By no means, I've not done business with her yet. So my first question is, your lender, because typically when you're talking to them, I'm a loan originator too. We have a mortgage company, so
Mhm.
I can talk to them on both sides. And I asked him, your lender, how's your lender helping you in this market? And she says they're really not. And
Mhm.
I offered this. How about we do a quick video together walking through a buy down to where I will put it on a whiteboard. We'll talk about it. And then you can share that video with your sellers, buyers, whatever, so
Mhm.
people can understand how a buy down works.
Right. That's a
You
great
know,
idea.
you know what she did?
What?
She completely froze on the phone. Literally, it felt like 2 hours. It was probably 5 or 10 seconds. And I said, Crystal, you still there? She goes, yeah. And I said, everything okay? She goes, yeah, I don't know if I want to do a video. And I said, okay.
Oof.
And I asked because it's just me. I
Mhm.
said, "Are you not comfortable on video?" Uh, and she said, "No, not really." I'm like, "Okay,
Mhm.
why don't we do something else then? Why don't we put together maybe a short article and we can put it as a blog post and people can look
Mhm.
at it that way?" She goes, "Well, I don't have time to write." And I'm like, "Okay."
Wow.
Um, it's just one obstacle after another. So these are the things that I struggle with, because being a business owner, podcaster, family man, all these things that come along with that, we all have to balance our time out and figure out what we need to do to make things work. And it's like, when people tell me that, it's like, I struggle, because I know there's 24 hours in a day. Time is our most valuable asset. Do you want to make your business be successful or not? But I don't ask that. That's the question that's in my head.
Right.
And that's the struggle. And I think that's the mindset. And whether we get outside of real estate or not, I think with mindset perspective, when people, how do I describe this? Instant gratification. If they can't get it right away, they just give up on it. And it's now's the time to build your business while the market is rough, because when it turns back around, you're going to be so busy, you're not going to know what to do with, because you've built that database of potential home buyers and sellers.
Right.
So, I mean, you're the professional. I'm asking the questions, and I didn't mean to go down this rabbit hole, but you brought it all out. So, I mean, here we are.
I would say on an individual basis, that's going to be hard, because while I haven't ever been in real estate myself, I know that it's got a high percentage of people that really don't ever make a lot of money.
Yep.
And I would recommend the very first time you contact any individual, you start off with what they want rather than any kind of problems they're having, and just kind of build that up, not even related to what they're doing now, but when you first got into real estate, what kind of hopes and dreams did you have? And build that up as much as you can. And then once they have that kind of built up inside, then it can be easy to figure out how to get to that dream by doing things like the video, the buy down video that you suggested.
Yeah. I guess the question is, in the natural conversation, we don't have to use real estate, because I'm not trying to monetize or take the conversation up. How do you get to that point to where you figure out their why? Whether it's that guy in Japan that's talking to women, or you talking to a group of people, or myself talking to realtors. I mean, how do you build up and get to that point to where you can feel like you're peeling some of the layers of the onion back, so you can get to those questions?
Well, I usually recommend to my sales clients that before you do any pitching of the product, before you use what's called a magic wand question, and you say, let's imagine that you had a magic wand and magic happened, and a year from now you were the ideal real estate agent. What would that look like? And that gets rid of all the real life obstacles, and they just start to dream, and you help them dream through a process, a questioning process, where you don't tell them anything. You just ask questions to get that dream bigger and bigger. And that gets to their why. And if you do that the first time you meet them, then that will be kind of a base from which you operate every time you talk to them.
I guess the next question to go down that rabbit hole is, you don't just come out and say, hey, if you had a magic wand, what would your real estate career look like a year from now? You've got to.
Why not?
I'm just asking, because for me, it feels
I know it's an uncomfortable question, but why
unnatural. That's how because I feel like I'm already digging into their personal life without ever warming them up, basically warming them up.
Right. Well, what a lot of my sales clients do is they say, look, before we get started, just to make sure this is a right product for you, let's play a little game. Imagine this product or this service turns out to be the ideal product, and it's, say, 6 months after you've got this product or service. Ideal situation, just completely perfect. What does that look like? And most people will not say, oh, that's a weird question, stay away from me. Most people will be happy to kind of fantasize about the ideal outcome.
Yeah. Because it brings them into a better space also, especially if they're challenged with something today.
Yeah, that's also what you mentioned earlier. This is one of the biggest obstacles to actually using these NLP language patterns, is they sound kind of strange. And people have this fear that when they ask these kind of strange questions, people are going to look at them sideways and say, are you trying some kind of trick on me or something? But people, if you're confident in your questions, people will just go along with
So that's the practice daily with it to make sure
you.
that
Yeah.
you feel comfortable on the inside so your
Right, right,
outside
right,
matches that. No, I like
right.
that. Um, we'll kind of wrap this up and land this one, but I've got a couple other questions. So let's just go away from real estate, man. I talk about it all day. We'll go away from that. For people that have social anxiety, because we tend to have a larger portion of the population that are just staying in their houses. I
Right,
mean,
right. Yeah, that is.
how can NLP help them and be able to start connecting with other people?
Well, first, to realize that there's no quick fix. That's the same problem that plagues the weight loss industry. People want to lose weight. They want to lose weight in a week and then go back to their normal lives. But to lose weight, you need to change your habits very, very slowly. So the first step
Yeah.
is to realize that it's going to take a while to get rid of social anxiety. It's going to take daily activity for a long time. And you can do that in 10 minutes a day by doing those exercises and just coming up with a kind of an external routine where you very, 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 very slowly progress. Like, and that does require that the person want to get rid of their social anxiety. And so for the first week, they might just go outside and walk around the block. And then the next week they walk a little bit further. And then maybe by the second month, they make eye contact with one person per day before they quickly look away and just slowly, slowly, slowly grow through a steady progress while they're working on the inner issues on the inside. So I would say the biggest thing that can help people with social anxiety is to expect it to take a long time of consistent, mostly boring daily behavior to get rid of that social anxiety. The problem is, like you said, we all have instant gratification. We want
Mhm.
answers. We want them now. They want to go see a therapist and get some magic pill that will get rid of all their social anxiety. But
Yep.
we have to have patience. Change can only come with patience and persistence.
Oh, a man after my own heart. You're using my words. That's what I talk about a lot on my Chasing Financial Freedom podcast is persistence, consistency, and getting back up every single time you get knocked
Yeah,
down, because
exactly.
that's just life. But we've seemed to have lost that. And to my last question is, if you're struggling with all this, how can one, and I have no problem talking about your book or pointing people in the right direction. If someone's listening to this podcast, where can they start? I mean, do you have tools that can help them start this
Yeah,
process and start using
absolutely.
NLP? Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, most of my books are filled with exercises like going back in your history, and our products come with these subliminal programming sessions. So while they're doing the exercises, they can relax and visualize stepping just outside of their comfort zone while they're being bombarded by all these positive statements that kind of help them along. And if you want to check out our products, look up mindpersuasion.com/start. And that's just got a big list of all our products. Go there, look around, find one that seems like it's a good match. All of our products are $50 or cheaper, so you're not going to break the bank, but just be ready to be consistent, do some daily practice, daily imagination practice, daily outside practice, and maybe some listening every day with the subliminal sessions. And you can slowly, slowly, slowly improve yourself.
Is that also where people can get your books, or do you suggest them
Yeah,
going to
yeah.
Amazon?
Everything is listed there. If you want to go straight for the books, then go to mindpersuasion.com/Kindle, and
Okay.
that'll jump to my author page on Kindle.
Do you have any audiobooks, or is it just all ebooks?
They're all ebooks, but some of them are sold in audiobook format. It's the same
Okay.
material, but it's just me reading it. So those are also available on that start page.
Okay. And the best place if someone wants to reach out to you, it sounds like you do. We didn't get into this, so let's get into it real quick. Are you doing coaching, as
Yeah,
in
yeah. I'm doing coaching.
one-on-one coaching, or is it group coaching, or both?
It's one-on-one coaching, 30-minute sessions. I recommend once a week to
Okay.
slowly deal with the issues. And
And
if
the
you want to
best
get in
place,
touch,
yeah, to
just
get
go
in
to
touch with
that
you.
page, mindpersuasion.com, start, and there's a contact button at the bottom. And there's
Perfect.
also a little thing on there about our coaching. So yeah, if you want to look us up, we'll definitely be glad to help you get out, help you out, do better. live life more fully, get more good stuff.
Amen. Amen to all that. Sir, thank you for coming on the show. Love what you're doing. Thank you for sharing and also going down a rabbit hole on my real estate stuff.
Yeah. Thank you, Ryan. It was great to be here.
All right.